On my YouTube channel, I have an American Mahjong lesson in 4 playlists. The playlists include fundamentals, skill builders, strategy, and variations. The videos in those playlists use my lesson kit. So if you're interested in teaching people how to play the game and you don't have a lesson plan of your own, you might consider buying my lesson kit. It's available on my website. Just go to my products page, scroll down, fill out that order form, and I'll get an email, and then we'll talk. I want to show you the contents of that lesson kit and explain how I use it. To actually see it in action, watch all those videos in those playlists because I use the tools in those videos. Actually, all those videos together are how I do my lessons exactly. Let's get to the contents of the lesson kit. The first thing I want to show you is the instructions. It's just a little packet here, and in here is an explanation of the contents and then how to maybe break out the lesson plan into multiple sessions. And then I go into explaining the lesson plan itself, and then I have a script. The script corresponds to the lesson plan. So the lesson plan has numbers on it, or steps. Those numbers are in the script. So you can follow along and see what I say when. And also, the numbers on the lesson plan correspond to the numbers on all the tools. There are envelopes for each step in the lesson plan that uses the teaching tools, including handouts. We'll get to that in a little bit. So on the envelopes, there are labels that correspond to the numbers on the lesson plan. I also include a skill builder lesson plan. When I go to a lesson, one of the first things that I do is set my lesson kit out on a teacher's table. And I pull out all the materials so that I can access them during the lesson. And I follow the lesson plan step by step. So the first thing that I talk about is the background of the game. And I explain where it came from, when it was created, who probably created it. That goes into history. Then I talk about the tiles themselves, the different suits, the winds, dragons, flowers, and jokers. Once I go over all the different suits, winds, dragons, flowers, all the tiles that they're going to be playing with, then I go into how they're going to be using the tiles, namely working with blocks, single, pair, pung, kong, quint. So I explain to them all of that, and we do these hands-on exercises the whole way. So it's very interactive, and they are hands-on. They're touching the tiles, using the tiles. So it's very tactile, which is a great way to learn. After we do the set modeling or block modeling, we go into suit modeling, and that's where the tools come in. The suit modeling is step 5. So these envelopes are labeled step 5, 1 through 5. So for example, 5-1, one suit. These are the strips. So you give one to each player, and they build a hand on that strip. And then you talk about it one at a time. Then we have 5-2, mixed suits. And there's a strip for each player. You have them build these hands, and then you talk about each one of them together as a group, because everybody learns exponentially, focused on one player at a time. They build the hands, and then you visit each player and talk about it. The next one, 5-3, one suit with corresponding dragons. There's a strip for each player. So they build one suit with a corresponding dragon. Then we have step 5-4, mixed suits with the opposite dragon. 3 colors, 3 suits. Then we go into singles and pairs. Step 5-5. And then there are strips with the year, news, singles, and pairs. And you talk about it, including talking about jokers. And that you can't use jokers for many of these blocks. So those are the modeling strips that walk a player through reading the card. Once we go through those exercises, we usually take a break. Then when we get back, I introduce the player card. We don't use the card until probably halfway through the lesson. All the tile introduction, working with the blocks, working with the suits, singles, pairs, all those things, we don't even look at the card yet. We look at the card way down in step 6, because it can be overwhelming. If you just give someone that card and expect them to read it and learn it after seeing it in one fell swoop, it's a little overwhelming. But when you step them through it like this with these strips, it's not so overwhelming, and it makes sense when they see it as a whole. So when I go through the card review, I start on the outside of it, and I explain that it's the flagship organization is the National Mahjong League, and that's usually the card we play with. So I explain that it comes out every year, and then I explain on the back that there are rules on the back, but it's very high level and not comprehensive. I also recommend that they purchase the booklet Mahjong Made Easy. And I'll have a link below the video so that you can see where to get that. I highly recommend that every teacher recommend that particular booklet in their lessons so that they have a reference when they're playing with their friends, especially if they're new to the game and they don't have experienced players with them. They could refer to that booklet. So once we go through the rules on the back, then we look at the front where all the categories are, the colors, letters, and numbers. And I tell them we're going to start at a very high level and we're going to drill down to the detail. So then what I do is I explain that it's 3 panels, and then I explain that it's divided into categories, and I talk about each of the categories, just like one sentence per category. So very high level. After I explain each of the categories, then we look at the hand level, and I explain the colors, letters, and numbers. And then I kind of remind them of the exercises that we did with the blocks of tiles, and the 1 color means 1 suit, 2 colors means 2 suits, 3 colors means 3 suits, and I point out some examples. Then we talk about the parentheses, and I pick out some of the examples. I pick out something simple, like any 3 suits, or any 1 suit for 1 color, 1 suit. Then I pick something middle of the road, for example, in the consecutive run, any 4 numbers. And I explain that it doesn't have to start with 1, it could start with 3. Then I pick something difficult. for example, in 3-6-9, where you might have pairs of 3 6s and 9s and kongs of 3s, but the kongs can be either 3s, 6s, or 9s. So I picked something simple, something middle of the road, and then something complicated. And then we talk about it. And if there are more questions, then I point out other parentheticals that are, similar to maybe what their questions are. After we talk about the parentheticals, then we talk about exposed versus concealed, and finally, the value of the hands. After I go over the player reference, the next step on the lesson plan is category modeling. For category modeling, I have an envelope. This is step 7. And in here are strips, one for each category on the card. And I give these strips to each of the players. And I have each of them build a hand in each of these categories one at a time. So I'll give the year to play to, let's say, East. Then the next player I'll give 2, 4, 6, 8. The next one I'll give like numbers, and the next one I'll give addition. So they're each building a hand, and when they're all done, then we visit each player and talk about it. So I would visit the player with the year category, and I would have them explain what their category is and how they built their hand. Then we would go to the next player, and everybody would be focused on each player that we're focused on. And that way they can learn 3 times more than had they been focused on their own category and not everybody else's. So you want to be very interactive with all of the exercise throughout the lesson plan. It's all kind of based on that same idea. Focus on one player at a time. Have them get in there with the tiles, but when they're done with the hand, you're going to be visiting and reviewing what each player has done one at a time and drawing everybody's attention to that one player and what they're working on. So once you do the first 4 categories, then you pick up the strips and you hand out another 4. Now there are 10 strips and 4 players. So at the end, you're going to have 2 of the strips passed, and then you're going to give out the final 2 so that it's equal. So there's a little bit of repetition, but you could just have them pick maybe a difficult hand under the category so that you can answer questions that might be applicable to more difficult hands. So that's how you do the category modeling. So after the category modeling, then I have all the players turn the tiles upside down and mix them up. And we do something that I call random pulls or Charleston modeling towards the end of the exercise. And that's all written in the instructions. But basically, I have each player take 13 random tiles. And then I have them put them upside down in front of their rack. And then one player at a time, we'll have them flip up their tiles, organize them, and pick a category to play. We'll focus one player at a time. Once one player has their tiles up and we decide what category they could play, then we go to the next player and they flip up their tiles. And then as a group, we talk about it. We look at what their tiles are and what category might be best. Then we focus on the next player, etc. Now, if you want, depending on the size of your class, you could have everybody flip up their tiles at the same time and try to find a category to play, and then stop the effort and focus on one player at a time. The idea here is that you want to draw everybody in one player at a time and review what they're working on so that everybody can learn 3 times more than if they were just focused on themselves. So once we do the random pulls, usually I like to do 3. So we'll do 1 random pull, find a category, put all the tiles in, do another random pull. Figure out a category, throw the tiles in, and do a 3rd random pull. Then I have them pick 3 discards, and that's when I introduce the Charleston. And I explain you're going to be passing up to 7 times, right, across, left, then left, across, right. So I have them pick 3 tiles, and then we go through a mock Charleston. So I have them pass to the right, and then I show them how your hand can change through the Charleston. And we walk through each player's incoming pass, one player at a time. So when a player gets a pass, I have them put it upside down on their card. And then one player at a time will flip up the tiles, see how it affects their hand, make any sort of decisions, and pick another pass. Then we would go to the next player. They would flip up their tiles, see how it affects their hand, pick 3 tiles to pass, and then we go to the next player, etc. And we do this through each Charleston pass. It seems arduous, but trust me, it works, and the process gets drilled in, especially the decision making and the chain reaction that results. So once they've experienced the Charleston exercise, then I have them throw all the tiles in, mix them up, and I teach them how to build the wall. And then I teach them how to deal the tiles. Then we play an open hand, and I have them pick a category, do the Charleston all open, and we visit each pass one player at a time, again, just like in the random pull or the Charleston modeling exercise. Then we do the pick and discard phase of the game. For the pick and discard phase of the game, I work with each player pick by pick, discard by discard. So player 1, East, pick or discards to get the game started. I say, can anybody take the tile, the discard? And they would say yes or no, and then we would talk about what would happen. If nobody took it, then I'd say, okay, now this player picks, and they would pick, and then we would talk about how that particular tile might affect their hand, and then find a discard and discard. And we would go player by player, pick by pick. And it seems very arduous, but trust me, this process really drills in the decision making and again, the chain reaction that happens pick by pick. And then depending on the exposures that occur as well. And of course, there are always mistakes that are made that you can talk about. So once you go through the pick and discard phase of the game, and hopefully somebody wins, you could explain how the payout works as well. You can hopefully have examples in there of what happens when there's an exposure with jokers and how joker exchanges work and things like that. So since each game has it is very situational, you may or may not be able to cover all the different rules in a game of Mahjong. So if you're doing just one lesson, I would refer them to my website where they can see all the different videos where I go through decision making and play solitaire and show them different situations that occur that bring different rules into play that may or may not happen in a play with coaching situation. So once we do that first play with coaching, then I go into strategy. That's step 12. So in step 12, that's when these bigger envelopes come into play. We have 3 that are numbered step 12. We have core strategy, and there's 4 of every card. So here's core strategy. It's a 3-panel card, and it's smaller than the American Mahjong card, so it'll slip right under the card out of the way. And they can have it open under their card and refer to it as needed during the game. For core strategy, it's based on strategy by wall, a concept that Tom Sloperama came up with, and I found it on Sloperama, and I thought it was brilliant. So I kind of adopted that particular method and added my own ideas to it as well, and created this core strategy card. So that is core strategy, and I'll have a video on that specifically called Strategy by Wall. So if you want to know more about that and see how that card comes into play, watch that video. It'll be under American Mahjong Strategy, Core Strategy, or Strategy by Wall. Then also during the Charleston, we're going to have 2 cards. One of them is called When to Pass Blind. And it goes into quite an explanation and different situations that may warrant passing blind. And I would read this during the Charleston, especially if something comes up to where someone needs to pass blind. And then the last one is when to stop the Charleston. This also is a 3-panel card and has an explanation of when this might happen and how to handle it. There's 4 of every card. So these cards are intended to be reused with the lesson kit. You can download PDF versions of the card and print them on regular paper, fold them up and give them as handouts, or you can purchase these from my website in packs so that you can hand out the cards on cardstock. They're very durable, and it makes a very nice handout for the people who attend your lesson. But that's up to you. You could either do paper versions for free, just download the PDF and print them out. It'll just require you to cut them up and fold them and prepare them. They come as a 2-page PDF, so you would have to print them double-sided and then cut them and fold them. Otherwise, you could purchase them. All that cutting and scoring, folding will be done on and printed on cardstock. So then the final piece of the puzzle is variations, and I usually go into variations only if I have time, because variations is controversial, and I don't do examples of variations. I just read about them so that they're aware that there are variations or house rules, and explain that the league does not condone variations or house rules, that they really support the rules that are in Mahjong Made Easy, which I bring up during the lesson probably a couple times at least. So again, there'll be a link below the video to where you can get that, because I think it's important for people who attend lessons to know that there is a guidebook with a bunch of the fundamental rules to play American Mahjong. So that concludes the demonstration of the contents of the lesson kit. Again, to see all these tools in action, watch all the American Mahjong lesson videos, because I use the lesson plan and all the tools in those videos. If you have any questions, let me know. Just write them in the comment section below or send me an email. My email's in the video description. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, consider subscribing. Click the bell if you do. That way you'll get notification for when I post new videos, and you won't miss an opportunity to learn a new strategy or pick up an insight to the game that could give you an advantage at the table. Between now and the next video, may all your picks be keepers.